You have probably come across this phrase at least once in your life. Social media is a powerful tool, and there is no denying that. Never before has it been easier to persuade people to support an obscure cause or to pull the strings behind a real life event. That said, it's never been easier for online groups to make their peers destroy themselves from the inside out. Peer pressure is a controversial topic that has been discussed and analyzed many times before. Nevertheless, I feel that it's important for me to talk about how peer pressure is warping the self image of adolescents because the digital world practically raises the youth nowadays. As someone who spends most of their time online, and along with the sources I have researched, I am sure to convince the audience into noticing how online peer pressure is efficient in damaging the self image of younger generations. In this speech, I will make it my mission to explain to the audience how peer pressure has negative psychological effects on the self image of adolescents in social media. Furthermore, I will illustrate to the audience how the developmental years of adolescents leave them more vulnerable to behavior and mental health changes. Next, I will go over how the fear of falling behind is a source of peer pressure. And lastly, I will provide the audience with solutions to help adolescents deal with peer pressure in social media. Now that adolescents are glued to social media during their developmental years, they are more susceptible to having their mental health and behavior warped by complying to the whims of a vast network of their peers. In the process of transitioning from teenager to adult, the brain will take its time maturing until it's capable of more reasonable thought. That said, an adolescent will struggle with good decision making, and this makes them more susceptible to giving into peer pressure with little resistance. According to this expert quote by pediatrician Gundir Dabia, quoted in an article made by Scripps Health, she states, quote, "A teenager's brain is only about 80% developed," end quote. Since an adolescent's brain has not matured, their online buddies may be successful into pressuring them into doing risky behavior to gain acceptance, even at the expense of their own mental health. Peer pressure online can warp the way adolescents view their bodies, increasing the risk of body dysmorphia. If they are constantly comparing themselves to the bodies of their peers or failing to keep up with certain beauty standards, they will continue to feel less comfortable in their own body. Health.ucdavis.edu warns, quote, "Filters can be for a great laugh, but the ability to easily alter physical appearance and hide imperfections can create false illusions. Constant exposure to altered images can also lead you to feel self-conscious and dislike the way you look." End quote. Cyberbullying is a later stage of online peer pressure, and it involves a group bullying individual members of their group and pressuring them to conform to their own values. OnSVG.com says, quote, "As per the 2017 School Crime Supplement to the National Crime Victimization Survey, National Center for Education Statistics and Bureau of Justice, amongst students ages 12 through 18 who reported being bullied, 15% were bullied online or by text." End quote. The 15% of students who were bullied online can possibly be traced back from peer pressure, and the toll an adolescent has to pay for failing to meet a group's expectations is the decline of their mental health and their self image soon after. Now that I have informed you of the dangers and harms that peer pressure perpetuates among adolescents in social media, I will now talk about the causes and motivations behind it. Adolescents often experience dread when they realize they are lagging behind in the newest developments of their social media group. Similarly, an adolescent would feel the pressure to go along with everything in their peer groups to prevent themselves from being excluded. The fear of missing out, abbreviated as FOMO, is essentially a state of dread that comes from not participating in the same activities as your friends, creating a sense of feeling left out. Throughout the years, the FOMO term has become synonymous with social media, and it's very evident that our youth experience this phenomena due to feeling immense pressure to participate in the latest hot trends like their peers. Socialmediavictims.org says, quote, "This desire is grounded in the need to belong. Teens commonly view social media as an extension of the self, in some cases to the point that their social media identity becomes the most important concept of self." End quote. This quote can explain how adolescents are willing to alter their self image, distorting it until they become the person who their peers want them to be. Online groups tend to emphasize the importance of complying to each other's wishes, basically just peer pressuring one another into accordance. However, if one doesn't manage to play their part, they will unfortunately start to get excluded and essentially kicked out of the group. And not only that, because according to raisingdigitalcitizens.com, they state, quote, being excluded and feeling left out online from digital groups can feel isolating and negatively impact a child's well being and self worth. The effects can be profound if a child feels excluded by their friends online. Additionally, peer pressure can be caused by trying to achieve someone else's status as a means to boost self esteem. Online groups tend to admire a celebrity or influencer, and they are willing to change their entire self image just to emulate an aspect of their lives. Publisher Dina Isawi states, quote, moreover, the pressure to present a perfect image on social media can create anxiety and stress for individuals, as they constantly feel the need to be validated and approved by others online. This can result in a constant need for validation and approval from others, which can be damaging to one's mental health and self worth. End quote. So, basically, it would be quite easy for an adolescent to fall into this trap of reaching an unrecognizable and flawless version of themselves due to their peers influencing them to behave exactly the same way as the ones they admire. After making clear the causes and motivations behind peer pressure, I would like to present to you what I think are good ways you can help adolescents from succumbing to peer pressure in social media. Now then, what exactly can we do to prevent adolescents from succumbing to peer pressure in social media? Well, I believe that we should have regular talks with the youngest in our family about how their friends are treating them online and encourage them to engage in groups of people that can hopefully lead them astray from negative influences online. It's always a good thing to check up on adolescents and ask them how they are doing, as we wouldn't want our future hopes to be in a bad place. Taking the time to discuss how they are doing in social media can provide insight on what potentially harmful activities they are partaking in. It would also be a good thing to tell them that they don't have to follow through with any of their friends' suggestions if it makes them feel uncomfortable, letting them know that their mental health is always the first priority. Adolescents can also be encouraged to involve themselves in positive peer pressure, which is the opposite kind of peer pressure this speech has been about. This includes integrating them into communities that actively engage in positive habits such as self growth and building trust. This can also lead them to develop friendships with people that won't force them to live up to the standards of anyone else. One thing that all of us can do today is to teach adolescents important media literacy skills. Since I'm sure that many of us have grown up with social media, we have experienced and learned from times where people have reported that a trend or practice is fine to follow. With the critical thinking skills that you have acquired during English class, you can go up to a young person in your family and help them identify the true meanings behind the self destructive trends that their peers are engaging in. In today's speech, I fulfilled my mission by explaining to the audience how adolescents have their self image warped by negative psychological effects when subjected to peer pressure on social media. First, I told the audience how the developmental years of adolescence have them susceptible to behavioral changes that is encouraged by their online peers. Next, I went over the pressure that adolescents feel when trying to prevent themselves from being excluded and trying to live up to an idol. And lastly, I provided the audience with solutions to help fix and maintain the self image of adolescents for future interactions that involve their online friends. It's absolutely critical to remember that adolescents project their self image into the real world. And as adults, it's our moral duty to help guide them through the negative influences that life throws at them, hopefully fostering a happier and healthier generation.